on this retreat, I've been speaking about the importance of bringing the quality of ease and relaxation, and I've been saying that a lot. But I'd like to actually, I think, make a slight adjustment in the way. I still think ease and relaxation is a fine way to speak about to speak about this, but it's possible to take it the wrong way. What I'm really getting to is um, more of a sense of letting be. And letting be and ease and relaxation can be the same thing, but they can be different. And what I mean is, um, it can happen for people that maybe their natural way that their body's working, they have to actually put in some extra effort to have the body be a little more relaxed, physically feeling the feeling of being relaxed. That can happen, right? And if they don't consciously do that, just the way their bodies are wired up or for different reasons, there can be a tense tightness already there. So yes, it can be useful to find ways to help relax, but that can become a whole project and a lot of doing and a lot of activity, and we're having to put a lot of attention on staying relaxed. And so sometimes the answer then might be let go of trying to make the body be anyway, just in this example, and let it just be how it wants to be. And so the real letting go is letting it go even into a state that maybe isn't as relaxed, but the ease is still there because we're not in contention with ourselves. And this is something about not being in contention with ourselves, letting ourselves be. And that's a whole process and learning. It can be a lifetime of exploration. What does that really mean to let myself be or to not be in contention with, sometimes we can all have moments, and for some of us, it's more times than others where we actually can have a adversarial relationship with our own being, with ourselves. It can feel like that sometimes. And so we're trying to make a shift in that way where we really can start to bring a sense of allowing and kindness to ourselves and a sense of letting ourselves be, whatever that looks like. The starting point should always be, this is really important, the starting point should always be what's actually real and true, what's actually happening, without the overlay of our judgments about it, right? And this is, we can have plenty of judgments about ourselves and how we should be, but I just want to say, you're the least qualified to judge yourself. You're not objective. You are the expert of the lived experience of your life. No question about, for each of us, that that's true. You're the expert of the experience of having your experience, right? Living your life. But the judgment, what you make of it, you're the least qualified, because all our, people who have judging and critical minds, those of you who have that, know that that judging and critical mind, you're not doing anything wrong. It's just, that's what a judging critical mind does. Who knows how it got in there? These forces are like little computer programs. We call them conditioned patterns of the mind. And so an image I like to use, and I think it works very well, is if you have you've got your computer and you have the different icons on the screen, and maybe you've got the icon and you click on it and it opens a Word document for typing a letter or something. When you click on that icon, you'll never get an Excel spreadsheet. Every time you're going to get the same thing when you click on it. You're going to get a Word document open up. Why is that? Because that's what it runs, a little program. That's what the program does. So sometimes we know how these conditioned patterns get in us. We know the history, whatever, and sometimes we don't. But in any case, we've had our life, we've had our history, we've got our somatic, our makeup, the makeup of our bodies, our minds, emotional, psychological, everything. And it works how it works. And so you got what you've got, and you are who you are. You don't have to justify who you are. You don't have to justify your views or opinions. You feel how you feel because that's how you feel. And your mind works how it works because that's who you are. That's how you are. So it's a really letting ourselves be without contention, right? And that can be really hard. So I was, but I actually mean it when I say we. I put myself in this too, all of us, we're all human beings, that we are the least qualified to judge yourself. And I'm not talking about the wisdom of discernment, but I'm talking about the story you make about yourself. I'm too much this, I'm not enough this. It's always going to be this way. I'm this, you know, um, that's not an objective view, right? It tends to come out of suffering, pain, anxiety, reactivity. Oftentimes those judging minds don't come out of love. The next time your mind is telling you something like that, just take a moment, check in. Does this voice feel loving and kind? Maybe it does. You have to see. It's interesting to pay attention in our own minds. If you've never done this experiment that I'm going to offer now, I think it could be useful and worthwhile. What percentage of your time, you have to have some mindfulness to pay attention. So don't go crazy over this, but check in a little bit. What percentage of your time is spent feeling at peace, fulfilled, content, resting in the stream of non-clinging with an open, loving heart? And what percentage of your time, or you could say, what percentage of your thoughts are some version of, I'm not okay. Am I okay? How am I going to be okay? Strategizing, comparing, suffering, judging in some way. Many people find that when they actually pay attention, it's rather shocking when they start to notice what's actually going on in their minds. And many people find when they really get up close, very, very close and intimate with anyone, no matter how they appear on the outside, that everyone's got their own suffering. Hopefully that's not the whole picture. We've got some happiness and joy too. I hope that's true. Depending on what's going on in our lives, it can be a preponderance of suffering. It doesn't feel like there's much joy. So it can be like that for short or long periods. I understand that. And there's even clinical depression, chronic loss, chronic physical pain. I recognize all of that. In the grander scheme, though, I think probably for most people over the course of a lifetime, certainly, hopefully we've at least had some moments of experiencing happiness too, that I hope. But certainly the suffering is part of the picture. And when we look very closely, we see sometimes maybe we're really not ever at peace all that much. I mean, again, I don't know. You have to look and do the experiment. How is it for you? Right. And so when we start to see that what's going on in our minds, and a lot of times this is what motivates us for these Dharma practices, is there a way out, right? This is what the Buddha was pointing to. And I think the idea was that if we this is kind of basic Dharma teaching, that if we keep trying the same strategies over and over, which I think we all do, right? Of trying to shift our circumstances and change things and make things how we want. It does work sometimes, but sometimes it won't work. And even if it does, things change and we don't, I mentioned this the other day, we can hopefully start at least a little bit. And all it takes is a little bit can be a big relief to start making the shift so that our well-being or our happiness is not only being with, is not only having or not having life be how I want it to be, but shifting is how am I relating with what's ever happening? And when we realize that we can, at least some of the time, we can start to learn. You don't have to be any good at this, by the way. this is a real, I find it quite liberating. I mentioned this the other day about, if you were starting to learn to play a musical instrument, I use that instrument. And we all know that uh, when you start off, if you've never played before, and you wouldn't even expect to be any good at it, right? Well, it's like that in meditation and Dharma practice and with life. We don't have to see more clearly than we can see. We can have all the parts of us. I mean, this is literally true. If you had to be far along on the path in order to make any progress on the path, you couldn't make any progress on the path. If you had to already be a great concentrator to start learning to concentrate, if you have to be really good at mindfulness or at insight, or happen to really know how to radiate loving kindness boundlessly in all directions before you could do it, no, we start from, it's not zero, but just to make a point, we start at zero, whatever the baseline is for us. It's not zero, but we start whatever our natural set point is in all these areas. And you don't have to see, I love, there's a quote from an author, E.L. Doctorow, talking about the process of writing a novel. And he says, writing a novel, I'm going to substitute in from writing a novel, meditation or Dharma practice, or actually learning how to live a wise life. I want to expand it. That's really what we're talking about. He says, writing a novel. I say, learning to live a wise life is like driving a car at night. You can only see as far as the headlights, but you can complete a journey of 1,000 miles that way. And I love that quote, and it's true, isn't it? And it's like that. You see as far and as clearly as you can see. And look, in case you don't already know, probably most of all of our actions and motivations are a mix of wholesome and unwholesome motivations. And we don't see them all even, right? It's a mix. And some people I've spoken with even during the interviews on this retreat have said, I'm trying to bring discernment and wisdom. And I think it is, but it might have a little bit of my aversion and greed or delusion in there too. And yes. And by definition, we can't see our own blind spots. Right? And I think the good news is everybody who's ever lived has been like this. When you look at the story of the Buddha, when before he did his practice and everything, he was a guy, and he was hanging out, and we don't really get a lot of details on his life, but he started at his set point. So I think this is good news, and we don't have to have more clarity, but just bringing what we have is enough. It really is. It's just amazing. I mean, if I can go from as psychologically wounded as I experienced myself with my despair and self-esteem when I was young, and actually get, I said the other day, I'm not making any grand claims, but I've gotten a lot of tremendous benefit and liberation from things. It's just transformed deeply. If it can happen for me, as messed up as I was, it can happen for anybody, right? And I viewed myself as being profoundly psychologically damaged. That was my view. Now, maybe I was also not qualified to be accurately judging myself. Maybe I should listen to my own advice, but that's how it felt at the time when I was young, how I experienced it. And I didn't have anybody telling me that hold my judgments lightly, because that may not be, I didn't have anybody. I had to kind of find my way. And maybe I would have suffered less if someone had said that particular phrase to me. I don't know. But we know, and in fact, I would invite this to you. Sometimes when we're judging ourselves, I think it was the Dalai Lama who said, we have to, if you're going to judge your practice, your Dharma practice, let's say, you have to take the longer term view. You have to look and take it in 5 or 10 year increments. And I don't think he meant that nothing will happen for 5 or 10 years, but it's a good judgment. So, I'd invite you right now that, maybe you see for yourself some of the fruits and benefits of your meditation, your Dharma practice. Obviously, we get fruits from other aspects of life, but from here, we're focusing from a Dharma perspective. But think back at some time, maybe think a little bit, or maybe think way back. Can you find anything, even one thing in your life where you can say, I used to struggle or get caught or suffer about this one thing way more. It's really that thing is better than it used to be in me about this particular aspect of yourself. Can you find anything? By the way, if you can't, everybody has that. If you can't, please contact me. I can help you find it. It's not hard. Sometimes we need someone to just point it outside of ourselves to point it to you. Don't despair. Everyone's got things like that where you can look back and you can go, I'm way freer or better or whatever in my life around this one aspect of how my life or my situation or how I act or react or am. And if you can do that, that's real fruit. It's not like somewhere way off in the distance. You can really see that we really can get fruit and benefits. Right? Sometimes it may not be Dharma practice. It may just be a lifetime of having lived in wisdom, and and I think hopefully that's true for all of us. But we bring these Dharma sensibilities and practices in to kind of help supercharge those things. So all of this is to say that I hope we can aim ourselves in the direction. We don't have to be any good at letting ourselves be either, by the way. You may hear a talk like this and go, yeah, that sounds good. I do want to let myself be and be in non-contention and really mean it. And then don't worry if you get caught back in all your old patterns of despair or self-judgment or whatever it is. It can be like that. And so that's what we're working on. It goes back to that computer program when you click on the icon. That's why you can't believe your mind. When you click on the icon and every time it gives you a Word doc, every time you see this particular person or your mother calls you up and there you are feeling like a 6-year-old child again. I'm speaking from my own experience, by the way. It's real in the experience, but all it means is when my mother, she's no longer alive now, but and she's, she did love me, but I had my wounds, right? Well, I'm not putting it on her. But when my mother called me up, well, I am putting it on her. I was 50 years old and she said to me, honey, I just wish you could get yourself together. Gee, Mom, thanks. I'm doing fine. Well, I don't even know where that's coming from. Mothers can be like this. So fathers too. So I don't think she meant it, but stuff like this goes in you, right? So when I see my mother, that's the mental equivalent of clicking on the icon that triggers off something around my self-esteem or worthiness or something like that. So it doesn't mean it's real. She just clicked on the icon and that pattern ran the only way it knew. The poor thing only knows how to have self-judgment and criticism. Right? That's what a judging mind does. It doesn't care whether it's accurate or not. It's not interested in that. It's not even interested whether you suffer or not. That's what it does. And it'll land on someone else or it will land on you. It doesn't care. Right? There's many other kinds of patterns. I just picked this one pattern of like a self-critical mind. That's just, believe me, all of us have what I call our top 10 tunes, or the main ways we tend to suffer or create suffering for ourselves in our mind. self-critical judgment mind could be one version that some of us have not. That's not everybody's top 10 tunes. And so we need to take these seriously because it's a real pattern and it really can trip us up. And it can be hard sometimes to see it just as an, yes, we feel it, but it's just some impersonal, it's personal because it's happening to you, but it's impersonal because it's just the unfolding of a series of computer programs, commands running. It's like that, right? So one way to think about the Dharma practice is that it's a way to find, you could think of the antivirus code or the eject button for our minds, right? For that particular pattern. And so it's a way of disentangling and not being so caught in these things. And then there's the disentangling from them, and then there's the actual healing where they actually tend to maybe self-liberate and can not even come up at all. So we don't even have to be concerned whether we're entangled or not. They're just not operative anymore. So these things can get better and better, right? And I don't know if you can get to a point as if you never had any wounds or challenges in a certain area. Yeah, but it can get so they're just not a big deal anymore. And we can be freer with that. And so getting back to what I was saying about non-contention and this ease and relaxation versus letting be, there is an ease in letting be. So going back to what I said in the beginning, if you're trying to meditate and say maybe you're putting mindfulness of breathing on your body, but you notice that your diaphragm tends to be tight. And I was having a conversation with someone about this today, and it's something that I've heard. These kind of things are not uncommon at all in different manifestations. And maybe to relax the tightness takes some doing. So maybe we have to experiment. Maybe I still want to put in a little bit of effort or doing to relax the tightness. Or maybe I just relax, letting the body be how it is. And even though the feeling's not so relaxed, my mind's more at ease because I've let it be more. And actually, I'm less bothered. I'm more bothered, perhaps, just in this example, if I find that, yes, I can, with some effort, make my diaphragm be less tight. But then I notice, well, how about if I just leave my body alone and let it do whatever it wants? The feeling may be more tight, but because I'm not working with it, I'm just letting go. Maybe I'm less bothered by it. And that can bring up a sense of ease and a sense of more allowing. Okay. And this ties in with this whole idea of equanimity that I want to say a little bit about. There's two kinds of equanimity. One is what's called equanimity of feeling. And that just means you're feeling equanimous because your experience is very smoothed out. Maybe something happens and the reactivity doesn't even arise in you, and you just stay calm and peaceful. And that is a kind of equanimity. And that's an important piece of equanimity. There's a whole nother piece of equanimity in which it's more about the letting be. So that and in this other piece, it's not so concerned with whether the mind becomes ruffled or reactive or not. It's underneath it is a deeper place of letting be, in non-contention around all the ups and downs that come. And I think probably for most people, what people find is over time with their meditation practice, it's not that you can't have I might have mentioned this yesterday. I apologize if I'm repeating, I just don't remember. That it's not that you can never be reactive when you've been meditating for 50 years or whatever it is, but the set point changes. Whereas maybe before we had a certain set point of how much we would tend to be reactive with things. And maybe we could just certainly have times of peace and calm and non-reactivity. The place of non-reactivity gets stronger and stronger, and we have fewer times, but we can go off balance, off the set point, get pulled in reactivity and greed, hatred, and delusion. But it's more of a temporary pull, and then we settle back into the stability place of the the change set point. So that's one of the things that can happen that helps smooth things out. That equanimity, but then also, so there's two parts. There's the healing, if that's a kind of a funny word, because I don't want to imply that we're all damaged and need healing, but there's the disentangling process that happens. And some of these patterns tend to let go and they're not operative. But then there's the clarity of awareness and the ability to know when we do need to, when the reactivity does come in, we've also got more awareness about it when it's happening. We know what's happening. And more of the time, we have the actual ability to let go in a way that's not fake, right? So if you're going through your life and you have an intention to live in a way that's less reactive, and then you notice that you've gotten reactive, maybe if we're not so good at it, even though we see it, it's hard to let go. And it can be this way, I think, for all of us. We can have times, but more of the time when we notice it, we can actually shift the mind in a genuine letting go, even in the midst of when it can be quite energetic around this difficulty. And it's not fake, it can be real. So that's another benefit to this equanimity that can come. So a lot of this is just this idea of learning to be with things. So another way I like to frame it is, one is I said earlier, letting be. There's ease and relaxation is I'll still like to use that phrase. There's, you could talk about letting be, non-contention, not being bothered, or, perhaps as a way, it's like when you're meditating and a lot of thoughts are going on. It's actually, one aspect is maybe you like to calm down so you don't have all the thoughts, but another is that you're meditating and just don't let your thoughts bother you, right? Not be bothered is another way to kind of think about it. Even thinking of, like, I was using the image of the computer program, you click on the icon, you always get the same program runs. So using the example, I'm going to stick on this one example. For those of you who have self-judgment, I'm not saying that's any better or worse than any other habits of patterns of mind. It's just the one that popped in my mind, so I'm sticking with that one. You can, when it gets triggered off, in the spirit of letting be, not being bothered, seeing it clearly, we see it what it is, and you can still, you see it's that, you can, whatever, you can pat it on the head, you can thank it for sharing, and then and then you can tell that little pattern, okay, you're there, you did your thing, now you go hang out over there, and we can go about our business, right? It can be like that, and it may or may not still be operative, but we don't have to be entangled in it. We have a liberation around it, right? So it can be kind of like that. And so sometimes I will use the phrase that I find to help me if there's something going. Ask myself the question, can I be with this? And you could try this out for yourself and, see if it helps you, but I don't have to get an answer. But I find just sometimes if there's a challenge, just by posing the question, can I be with this? That kind of opens up, because to me, that way of phrasing it, there's something kind. It's not like, well, I'll give you an example. I've mentioned that, I've done lots of retreats over all these years of varying lengths, and the longest one I did, it was almost a year long. And I remember being on this retreat one day. I was way into it. Having a retreat was great. One day I woke up and I'm just burning in hatred for all beings. It was terrible. And I'm walking around. I mostly was just in my room practicing, but I'd come out, go to the dining hall to eat or go do walking meditation, whatever. And I kept thinking, God, I hope nobody's developed psychic powers, because, oh my God, if they know what's going on in my mind. I mean, everybody who would pass me, my mind would just, something snarky would go out toward them. And then I'm yelling at myself, Shankman, which was not helping. What's the matter with you? So I was beating myself up. And then finally, I got it. I'm sitting there eating lunch, and I'd just been burning in this. It was a lot of suffering, and I didn't know where did this come from? But bringing that, I remember it said, can I be with this? I've tried everything. I've already tried loving kindness, You can send hatred to loving kindness. It's not hard to do. So I was able to, and it was like that, it's like, everybody could just die. It was was the feeling, right? So, okay, I'm having a hard time. So I tried all these ways to adjust it and it wasn't working. So then I remembered, can I be with this? And so finally, I think, I don't know, I probably said something to my mind to the effect of, okay, fine. This is the way you want to be. We'll just go back to the room, finish eating. We're just going to lie in the bed and you can just sit there and burn and hate all you want and see how you like that. Right. And my job will just be to leave you alone and see if I can just be with this. And so I did. And I just allowed the process. And there was kind of an equanimity to that when I was able to bring some intentionality. And then over its time, like everything, it sort of went through its process. Later on, I have a memory that it was sort of gone. And the rest of the day I went about back to, and it was just like, well, what was all that? I don't know. It just happened. So this idea of asking if we can be with something can be powerful. Sometimes the answer is no, I cannot be with this. That's important, very, very important to honor. I'll come back to that in a minute. I forgot one important piece. Um, this idea of letting things be does not mean that everything is okay. We're using this in a very specific way about working with our relationship of learning to let go and everything. But it doesn't mean that whatever happened to you in your life that this person did was okay. It's not okay that that happened to you. I try to avoid politics because I don't assume we have all the same politics. Probably statistically, most people in the Dharma scene kind of lean in one direction politically, but I don't assume we all share the same politics. But and when that's fine. We want everyone to just be able to be themselves here. You don't have to hide out. Uh, you know, for those of you down here in the States who voted for Donald Trump, you don't have to hide out, right? You're just what you are, right? My politics have to be a little different. I'm more of a liberal, progressive kind of person. And so I do use Donald Trump some because, and I do actually owe him a debt of gratitude because anyone who's a Dharma teacher knows, after a while you run out of stories, and a good story for a Dharma talk is like gold. I got so many Dharma talks from Trump about working with him because he was a super challenging guy for me and so again, if you feel differently, just plug in whomever you're challenged. We've all got our Trump. So maybe your Donald Trump is some, more liberal person. That's fine, but the point I'm making will work. Find your Trump, your inner Trump, and 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 then see if it's challenging. And sometimes the answer is no, I have not found the way to be with this. And so a lot of the talks I would give, I was actually serious. I say I owe him a debt of gratitude, but I've gotten a lot about sharing about, well, this is how I was attempting to work with it. And it doesn't mean it's okay if there's things in this world that we need to make changes around, all kinds of issues around social justice and climate change. And anyway, I could go on and on about all the things that we don't just say, well, that's okay. That's not what letting be means. But to the extent we're able to find some balance instead of jumping to reactivity and having our hearts close off, to that extent, first of all, we suffer less, we create less suffering for others, and we're able to probably we have a better chance to find a more wise and skillful response. I taught meditation in prisons and jails for several decades. I go back into the 1970s. I was part of a group called the Prison Ashram Project. A man like Bo Lazoff and some others were there. And I was going into San Quentin back then. And I don't do this anymore, but I used to actually be a Buddhist chaplain. I mean, it was not a paid position, a volunteer thing, at 2 California state prisons. And I started programs that are still going to this day and in some tough prisons. And I remember going into this one, it's called Salinas Valley State Prison. And this was like what they call it here in California, it's a level 4. And it's kind of like when you've heard of Pelican Bay, which is infamous. This one's like that. It's really a rough place. We had our Dharma group and some really great guys in there. And one day, one guy came to me. He was a Latino guy, and he was in one of the gangs, and he'd become a Dharma person. He was out of the gangs, and he said to me, wanted my advice on what to do. And he said, his gang has assigned him to go stab someone in the other gang. In retaliation for that gang had stabbed someone in his gang. So you have to pay back, right? He said to me, what do I do? He says, I'm not going to go stab somebody. But if I don't, my own gang's going to come after and get me. What do I do? Well, I have to be very respectful because, first of all, he's stuck in there. And in an hour or two, I'm walking out the front gate. Have to be very, very respectful, like to, sitting here, so easy dispensing my wisdom, right? But I'm not living his life. And I have to be so respectful. And so I said to him, I don't know. But the only thing I do know is, to the extent in this is a situation that you wouldn't say, let this be. Maybe it's too much, but to the extent that you're able to find some degree of equanimity and balance rather than just reacting out of fear or anger, if you can find a way, I think you at least have a better chance of finding a good solution. And something might, or whatever. And then I didn't see him for a few months. And one day he showed up, and there he was back in the group. It turned out he had been throw him in the hole. He had been locked in solitaire for a couple of months. I said, well, what's going on? How are you? Are you okay? We caught up, and he said that he said, well, I knew I wasn't going to stab the guy. He said, so what he did was he had his homemade, they call them shanks. It's a homemade, they take pieces of plastic and they shave them into these really sharp kind of knives. And he had his shank out there on the yard where everyone could see him. And he went up to the person he's supposed to stab, and he went to stab them, but he purposely made it look stumbled, like he fell, and just barely grazed the guy's shirt. And so it turned out he satisfied his gang that he tried to do his part, and he didn't actually stab anyone, and he took it on. This was his words. He determined that was his karma. He had, for doing his crime and being in jail. This is, I wouldn't say it's his karma, because I want to be very respectful. I'm just saying what he said, and that he accepted that was the price, and he went in of living true to his heart. And I like to think that that's a nice teaching story. It actually happened, but it's a nice teaching story about the power of finding some kind of, maybe it was just a little ability to go in quiet and not just automatically react, and maybe some unexpected ways of responding wisely in life can come. So it can be like that sometimes. And so it's an example of, when we talk about being with, we want to know when it's appropriate to use that language, right? And so if there's really bad stuff going on out there, you don't necessarily say, well, just be with it. No, you got to go stop it or change it. And we're not throwing that part of it out, but it's more bringing in the part of when can we use that kind of attitude to help us. That's kind of the idea. But we have to recognize there's an image that I use that I think works. I like the image. Some of you, there's a few people on here who I've meditated with before, and maybe you've heard this because I use it a lot. I like the image. It's the image of a circle. And the idea is that you are resting at the center of the circle. And however large or small the circle is, it contains all the experiences of our life for which we can be present with in a non-reactive way. We're able to be with, whole, let be. And if something, either by its quality or just the intensity, gets too much, it's outside the edge of our circle. That's something that's it's too much for us to be with. And it's not a judgment. we can all come up with things in life that are just too hard to be with. When my daughter was a teenager, she said a couple of retreats when she was young, and she was going to do this retreat, and I injured my neck, and I had this, for about 2 months it lasted, I had this radiating nerve pain down my neck. And it was not only the intensity, but just the quality. If you've ever had that kind of a radiating nerve pain, it's maddening. It's almost, you just can't be with it, but I couldn't relieve it. And so I couldn't sit and meditate. And I went to I said, well, I'm just going to, I said, I'm going to go to the retreat and just sit and be present with all experiences as they arise and pass away. So I'm sitting there. It wasn't even close. Was not even close. I was not close to being able to be with this. I'm moving, I'm suffering. I just couldn't. So I went to the retreat teacher about it. And he was so, he said, I don't know what he's going to tell me, some wisdom about letting things be. No, it was all about fixing it. He said, here, we got to get you to lie down. Does warm hurt? Do you need a cold pack? What kind of pill? You're taking pain meds, right? It was all just fix it, because he saw that it was outside my circle. And it's not a judgment. If something's outside your circle, we have to acknowledge that, right? And so there will be things like that. And then maybe it is challenging for us. And then we either need to bring the intensity down if we are fortunate enough to have the option, or we need to bring way up our ability to be present to meet it if we can't bring it down. We need one or the other, because if it's really too much and you can't change it or get away from it, that's tough. That's suffering, right? So a lot of life can be this way. So we want to be respectful of that. And it's exactly like we're talking about meditation. When is it time to shift and stretch your knee out? For example, if you have knee pain, or stay with it. There'll be some times when it's clearly within our circle, and we know, I can be with this, or I can open my heart to this. And there'll be other times when clearly, like, forget it. I haven't gotten there yet. My circle keeps growing through my Dharma practice, but it hasn't gotten that big yet. But sometimes there's a gray zone. And so we just, you might think you can be with it, and really you couldn't, and you were struggling, or you could have been with it and thought you couldn't. It's okay. That's okay. That's just the learning. But this idea of recognizing that, because the answer in meditation and in Dharma and life, oftentimes from a Dharma perspective, is just, well, you should be with it, note it mindfully. That's an important skill to have, and probably one that we all could use more of. So we don't want to throw that wise advice away. I'm just saying it's not always the right answer. Sometimes the answer is stop. Get up from that sit, or whatever we're dealing with, if you have the option. Another thing I found that helps me with this when things are especially challenging is I go back to around letting be and not getting caught in the energetic pull of things. That's what can catch us up. We want to let things be. We want to be non-reactive. But our energy, there's an energy to things. Like maybe it feels like I'm really mad, and use political examples or whatever, and you really do want to throw a brick through your television or whatever it is, and that's the feeling of it, and that feeling can take us. I try to go back to my aspiration and remember my intention and aspiration, and I offer that to you. So I'll share one of my aspirations of mine, and you'll have your own. I have an aspiration that my heart never closes off to any living beings, period. That's a real aspiration. I actually take it seriously. And of course, I have many opportunities to see where more work needs to be done, right? And I like to see them as learning opportunities, because if I care about that aspiration, if I take it seriously, then it shouldn't be dependent on my opinion. So if I take a particular political figure who the feeling is I don't want to open my heart to them. That's the felt feeling of it. They're horrible or whatever the feeling of it is. It's easy to go with that and no one would blame me, right? But that's not what I want my life to be about. It's a higher aspiration. So when I go back to my aspiration and really feel into it and reconnect with it, that can help me remember, oh, it even counts when I don't feel like it. So then I can ask myself, well, what do I do? And so there might be some situations or people, again, this aspiration when I don't want my heart to ever close off. And my heart is closed off, and I maybe have not found the key to unlock that yet. And I'm not going to fall in love with Donald Trump. It just ain't going to happen. That's just not going to happen. But that's not what it has to be. I can just be in the open inquiry. What might it be that I don't have to make it into this love, but that just my heart's just not closed off? What might that look like for this particular person or circumstances? And I hold it as a possibility in my mind. And you'll have to check back with me. It's still a work in progress. We can all find these very strong examples, hard examples. But I know that I'm still willing to stand in the possibility and just bring the best I can. And then if it may be too much for me and I need to be able to pull back if I have the option, or maybe I have to sit in the feeling of ill will. And the equanimity is to be in that. Like that example I was giving when I was on retreat, and I just had to go back and sort of just let be in that, because that was what was real and true. So we have to find our way through in the best we can. So those are a few thoughts I just wanted to share, because it's my last talk on the retreat about sort of an attitudes around being kind to ourselves, not, I guess to summarize, it goes back to this idea I said earlier of, I hope for us all, the starting point for any place is connecting in without a judgment. What is actually going on right now? What's real and true? And it may not be pretty, okay? It's like that sometimes, but we just start and go, okay, it's like this. Sitting with a heart of ill will, this is what it feels like. It's like this. And then we start to maybe connect with your intention. Maybe we start to bring in the question, can I be with this? Maybe we see the equanimity is that, how do we be when it's outside our circle? Maybe we bring in that, or we recognize, oh, it really is in my circle. I could really let go around this, right? So we find these different ways of working with it. So I just wanted to offer a few things that maybe, if some of that's useful for you to, and staying in touch with your intention and aspiration as we move forward. If you don't remember anything else, I hope you'll remember about being kind to ourselves. And that includes the part of you that can't be kind to yourself, okay? I mean, I know that's kind of a weird, maybe that sounds kind of a funny way of saying it, but if that's what's real and true, then you have to hold that in the way you might approach it to a dear friend, maybe. If you're fortunate enough, we don't all have those dear friends, but if you can imagine maybe, or have one, and if they're being hard on themselves, and how would you be towards them? Maybe you can hold yourself like that. That could be helpful too. So as we come, I just have a few minutes left in the talk. I just want to offer one more thing in this whole idea of this path that we're on, because all the things I've been talking about, it's part of our learning. And again, we don't have to be good at knowing how to let go or keep the heart open, or letting be or not be bothered by things, or having non-contention with ourselves or with other people or other things. But we can hold the intention or aspiration to aim in that direction, and then keeping that aiming in mind. Then when we bump up against things, we'll see where we're at, and it's a feedback, and then we get to learn where more work needs to be done. And we just hold it like that with curiosity and interest, not with beating ourselves up. So I want to offer this image to you to end. In the Pali text, there's a lot of water imagery, all kinds of water imagery. Even the meditative states of jhana, there's these similes that describe it that use a lot of beautiful water imagery of the depth, cool depth of the water in a lake and all different kinds of things. And there's also imagery of rivers and streams. And there's one idea in the Dharma called entering the stream. And the idea is that as the Dharma becomes more and more alive and wakes up in us, this you call the stream of Dharma, the stream of, boy, there's so many ways, the stream of non-clinging, the stream of wakefulness, this I just call it the stream of Dharma, is actually more part of our lived experience more of the time. And the idea then is that starts to pull us more and more. And once we've really gotten into the stream deeply, it can't help but take us in a positive direction. So the image is like this. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and we have the Mississippi River there. And if you've ever seen it, I mean, it's one of the biggest rivers in the world. And in some places it's a mile across. I mean, the thing's huge. And it's really, if you go look at it, the currents are quite strong, and it dumps out in New Orleans into the Gulf of Mexico. Well, when you're near the shore, the stream can carry you, but you can get washed back up on the shore, you can get caught up in the brush. But if you paddle way out, you've really entered that stream of the river way out. There's only one way you can possibly go. You're going to end up in the Gulf of Mexico. Nothing can stop that. That's the power of what that river is going to take you. It's just the current's just going to take you on down. Now, what can happen is sometimes we think we're heading to the Gulf of Mexico, but if you get up in a plane and look at the Mississippi River, there are some places, it goes through some places that has over many thousands of years has had earthquakes, and it's actually shifted the direction of the river some. So it looks like it's heading south, and it literally bends 90 degrees and it's going north, and then it bends back around and goes south. So if you think you're going south, and you got your compass, and all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, what's going on? I'm not only not going south, I'm going the opposite direction. I'm going north. But we don't have the big perspective, and it works its way around and it takes us. So it's like that with entering the stream and the Dharma. And what I want to propose is that whether you know it or not, all of us here have been in this process of entering the stream. Because we spend time, regardless of how we judge ourselves, we think, oh, I'm new, I don't know anything, or I've been doing this for 25 years and I haven't made any progress, or we judge ourselves in these crazy ways. In whatever ways we direct our attention and direct our hearts and minds, those are the qualities that strengthen in us. It's not possible to go any other way. So when you spend time learning how to quiet your mind, learning how to be present with yourself, trying to be kind to yourself, you can't help but strengthen those things. You cannot help but move in the direction, it's like the Mississippi River, of heading towards greater freedom and liberation. It's actually not possible to go back. You may in a moment think, oh, my life's going this way, and then whatever happens, and then you realize, wait a minute, I'm going the wrong way, right? When you forget and get reactive and get caught up again. But in the big picture, it works its way out. You'll wake up out of the trances, you'll come to your, back to your mindfulness, your awareness in it. And so we're all in this idea, and you can hold this idea of entering the stream and feeling kind of that a gladness, in a sense, of the stream of Dharma supporting us and carrying us. And that really it's literally true that it's not possible to go in any direction except towards ever more liberation and freedom. Because this is the way this path heads. It doesn't head anyplace else. And so I would offer to you that then in closing, when you think back to when the Buddha was alive, we've kind of deified the Buddha and everything, but there was a real person walking around, and when he was alive, it was as real as this moment is for us. And there were real people hanging out with him in small and large groups and hearing Dharma talks, and it was very real, right? And then they were just like us. They practiced, and if when you read the stories, they weren't all whatever, floating in the sky and had transcended. And they had the same, it's amazing some of the struggles some of these people had and that they worked with and dealt with. And so, they really were like us, right? I'm sure the Buddha had a pretty amazing presence. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful or diminish in any way, but I'm trying to instead of diminish that, I'm trying to empower all of us to say, we're the same way, we're of the same nature. And the thing I want to really pass on to you is that through then the generations from the Buddha, there was each a living link in the chain that passed down that actually was the students of the previous generation. And then started with and had their struggles and learned, but kept at it, practiced, and they were then that living link in the chain, and then they became the elders of the next generation, and so on. So I want to offer to you that here we are. And this is not anybody else. It's us. Those of us here, 26 of us here right now, we are the living link in the chain. We're the students of the previous generation. And we are the elders of the next generation. And it's an honor, it's a privilege, but it's also kind of a gift. I don't want to say a responsibility, but a gift that we've received and that we pass on as we sort of actualize this idea of immersing ourselves in the stream of Dharma more, so that I keep using this image from the Buddha to make ourselves a light in the world. And as that becomes more authentic and actualized in us, even a little bit, then we're actually able to step into our important place and it's not an ego thing like, oh, I'm the elder. No, we're not talking about like that, but really from a place of wisdom and care and love that we become the living link. And I offer that to you because I just happen to like that image. And it's not like, hey, this is great, I'm the living link. And no, we're not talking like that, but just to feel the kind of, it's like an honor to be able to practice Dharma and share with others. Maybe you just share by the nature of your being. Doesn't mean you have to go write a book or be a teacher or any of that kind of stuff, but that's not what this Dharma is anyway. It's our actual lived presence of our being anyway, is the real. All the rest, none of that matters anyway. And so that's our gift that comes. And so I offer that to you, that you don't fall into what I talked about at the beginning of the talk, which is a mistaken view that tends to diminish ourselves, but rather, yes, can acknowledge where there's learning edges for us and work to be done, but also can start to live out of attunement with your own inner wisdom and your own inner guidance and your own inner teacher to serve you. And then as you embody it more, to come out and to be a gift for others. That's kind of the idea I was getting at. So I'll stop there. And thank you for your kind attention. And